Good morning, everyone. So welcome to our second panel at Advertising Week. If you were here on Tuesday, you might remember that I was speaking with Anubhav from Live Nation, who's head of product development. And it was a really interesting talk about how that research and insight team started there. And today is a little bit of a different sort of spectrum. So today we've got a really breadth of experience, but also ideas and hopefully some arguments as well, now and then, about if someone's right or if someone was wrong. So the game plan today is for me to ask loads of different questions to our panel, and then it's up to you guys to use Slido to ask some questions as well. So Slido is on the app. This session is more for you than for us as well. So please do use Slido to ask some questions, and I'll happily answer or ask them to the audience as we go. So my name is Jake. I'm the Research and Insight Manager at Meshh, and I think I won't introduce anyone here, but I'll let you guys do that. So I think what would be great to do is if we do where you're from, the organisation where you work, but also your favourite pizza. I want to know what sort of pizza you like. And if you don't like pizza, then it could be anything else what you really like. Might be a favourite fact or something a little bit weird and wonderful. Kathy, go for it.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kathy Lubner. I work at Nielsen here in New York. I lead the consumer research and insights team for Nielsen Music as well as Nielsen Sports. And my favorite pizza, that's actually, I might start a fight actually right in the beginning, because I lived for many years in Chicago, so I actually have two favorites. I have a deep dish favorite, which is Lou Malnati's, and then I actually just like my corner pizza place, which is called Luigi's here in New York.
Okay. Justin?
Hey, I'm Justin Logerfo. I'm the Director of Advertising Analytics at TripAdvisor, where I'm kind of leading a lot of our branding efforts in product monetization work. My favorite pizza is pepperoni, probably from Prince Street Pizza. I'm a native New Yorker, so definitely a great spot, and love to go there.
Eric?
Hi, I'm Eric Alden. I have to look down, what's my title? Vice President, Director of Business Leadership at Momentum. I oversee several different verticals on the Verizon account. We do 1,800 different events across all those, the two different verticals that I oversee over there each year. So there's always plenty of data to dive into. Looking at pizza, I was the publisher of Time Out for a couple of years, so I've been to a lot of pizza places, so I'm going to break it down to two as well. One, I think the best pizza.
One.
Oh, the best pizza in New York is the original Patsy's, which is on 111th and First Avenue. No debate. Sorry. Okay. And then best 3 a.m., 4 a.m. pizza, Roma's, just down the block from my place on the East Side.
So we'll all be going to pizza places after this chat then, I'm guessing. Yeah. So let's just start one off with a really interesting question, I think, because a lot of market researchers have different avenues in their careers. So Justin, let's start with yourself. How did you get into market research as a career point of view?
Yeah, so I started on the agency side, and I actually started in a pharmaceutical advertising agency, and we were doing a lot of just primary research with actual panels, with two-way glass mirrors and physicians, and it was really kind of at the paramount of when data and analytics really started to come to the forefront in our industry. And we were starting to really understand and look at research and information to drive better business outcomes for some of our clients. So that's really how I got started, and over the course of the last couple of years, it's really not only driven better business outcomes for a lot of our clients, but it's also measurable and trackable, and a lot of clients want to come back to us more frequently because we're able to deliver really meaningful and impactful results for them.
Okay. Eric?
Interesting. So I'm in business leadership, which in some forms would come across more as a client services, but definitely my career has taken me through a whole bunch of different levels. I actually started in sort of a strange business. I was working at an advertising agency that was primarily focused on Broadway shows. So we actually broke this down very interestingly, working with our insights and analytics department to really understand the customer, because so much of it is based on ticket buyers. Anyone who lives in New York knows that it's really busy during summer, and it's really busy during the holiday season, but it's really trying to figure out those ebbs and flows of when the traffic is here and being able to target those audiences as well. So the idea is to get as many butts and seats as possible when you're in that type of business. So really understanding the traffic flows of that was interesting, because you know who to be able to target throughout the year, and how you can price your tickets, how you're going to be able to fill the theater 8 times a week. So, I've kind of gone through a whole bunch of different things working in traditional media, and then now that I'm in experiential, it's been really interesting to, bring in different tactics to be able to understand what makes an event successful, but also how do we choose where we're going to go. I touched on earlier that we're doing 1,800 events. So just this past week, we went to 45 of them, and a music festival, with 100,000 people there. And it's trying to pull out what's the interesting information from this that we can learn something new, and also be able to tell the story to our client. But more so, what can we understand for ourselves to make ourselves better each week?
Yeah, of course. No, it's a great point. Kathy, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I probably have had a more maybe traditional path. So I've been doing supplier-based market research for 20 years now, and so I've gotten to see a lot of the changes in the industry, and also just have gotten a lot of a breadth of experience across both quantitative and qualitative methodologies. And what I really think has been interesting for me personally is my role at Nielsen allows me to do more experiential research. And so what I've really tried to do is take the rigor and the robustness of the more traditional approaches that I've used in the past in advertising effectiveness and brand equity research, and really apply that same sort of thinking to experiential to make sure that the insights that we get are just as robust and meaningful for experiential.
So obviously everyone's got a range of different experiences, and they've been in different roles for a number of years. But what sort of changes do you think have you seen from when you started in your very first role to now? What sort of changes in the industry do you think has sort of taken over or been used?
Everything.
Yeah, well, I know.
some particular things.
Really, it is everything. One change that I've noticed is that even in research, so in general, we've kind of become, more about trying to make sure that the people have access to whatever they want, whenever they want it. And I think that's just in general. And research and how we capture and collect research has been similar in that way, in the sense of, we used to be much more kind of like, the researchers called the shots and kind of figured out what questions they wanted to ask. And it didn't matter if, it was kind of a boring, survey and lengthy survey. And now I think we've really migrated to figuring out ways to get information from consumers in a way that is more on their terms. So more bite-sized pieces, more kind of in the moment work, and really trying to help them give us their honest opinion in a way that is, as natural and unintrusive as possible.
Yeah, from my perspective, I'd say there's really 2 things. One is the volume of data that's out there right now, especially considering that we all have multiple devices. We're constantly on them, 24/7, and a lot of the clients in the advertising space now are demanding ROI. It used to be you could create content or creative or messaging and throw a couple $1 million at something and provide results, and that was kind of the status quo. Now it's they want to see the ROI. They want you as the advertiser to or sort of as the client of theirs to prove to them that it's working and why, right? And then provide them rationale and insight for, why are we seeing peaks and valleys? What did we do? What can we be doing better? What can we be doing differently? How can we improve the program performance? How can we, make optimizations or tweaks to make sure we're hitting our goals, our KPIs? So really, from my perspective, it's really been very, very ROI focused initiatives and being able to show value from a lot of the work that we've done in the industry.
Definitely,
Eric?
yeah, and I think coming more from a traditional media perspective as well, there's those hot topics that everyone's been talking about over the last 5-6 years, and it's like, what's the current one right now? And it's viewability was the hot thing, a few years ago, especially when I was working at Time Out. That was very important. We have to get to a certain percentage, and that's, for our advertisers. But then on top of that, I remember sitting in meetings, and hopefully we're not all still sitting in meetings like this, but maybe we are, where you're looking at your ROI and, what your performance looks like every week. And everyone's like, look how well Google AdWords is doing. And you're like, that's great. What about the rest of this media that's probably pushing people towards this? So, I'm glad that we're at least looking at attribution, especially when you're looking at things like experiential that are driving insights into or consumer preference and other things that once they leave this event, like if they're going online or they're going to purchase something, how can we attribute that back to the experience?
I mean, the other thing I'll add, to kind of dovetail off of Eric's point, is it's analysis by paralysis, right? There's so much data out there and so many different competing signals from a metric and KPI perspective that sometimes we as advertisers can get caught up in all these different signals or noise and kind of lose sight of what is the thing that we most care about, right, and why, and then how do we drive towards that or track towards it.
So is there something called too much data? Can a brand or an organization have too much data to use? Do you get that?
It's not even just the brand, it's like us as humans. Like, think how much more difficult, does it feel like it's more difficult now to make a decision than it used to be? Like, to me it does, because you have all these different voices and all these different websites that you can get this information from, and you're like, oh, well, this website says this, but then my best friend said this, and all this. So there's so much noise now that how do you find the right information to choose,
Yeah. And so with all that data to choose from, do you think in your current roles now there's even more of a pressure to provide that sort of ROI off those results and off your projects, what you're sort of working on?
I'd say sure, definitely. I mean, I think, with all the information, we want to be able to, for a lot of our clients, show value, right? How are we driving value for them? How are they, getting new customers? How are they growing their businesses respectively? So, providing data and really insight, because at the end of the day, for our business, it's insight, right, around travelers, consumption patterns. What are the travel occasions and signals that we can provide our clients so that they can take advantage of that. And depending on their business, it could be financial services, it could be restaurant groups, it could be hotels, whatever the case is. We want to be able to provide them with something very meaningful and usable so that it can add value to their business.
Eric, nodding your head there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that made me think more. When you're touching on ROI and that being, obviously that's important across everything. I think so. Little insight. Justin and I worked together recently. I used to copy off his paper all the time, so any sort of data I'm going to give you is from this guy right here. But we were working with Meshh. We were working with Verizon to do an activation at the New York International Auto Show, and we actually had 2 different setups in the spaces there. And with one of them, we did our standard setup, which was sort of a connected home sort of experience for the Fios brand, which is a cable brand in the Northeast that Verizon owns. We also, with our second space, we were able to get them to invest in something, a new experience that we thought would be more engaging for the public. So this was the first time we'd actually used Meshh to really understand, to look at what our passerbys were, what our engagements might be. And when we were analyzing the data afterwards, we saw that the experience that the new experience that we invested in, while it only had 13% more traffic than the other one, the engagement rate on that was 162% higher. It was just absolutely incredible to be able to bring that to a client. And while it doesn't exactly say this is what you earned back from it, to be able to show that if you invest in the right things, the audience will listen to what you're trying to tell them.
Yeah, no, definitely a good point. Kathy, are you?
I mean, as I'm listening, I mean, I'm just thinking, yes, like exactly what you're saying. That's exactly why I'm in business. I mean, it's to try to help cut through the noise, the clutter, and really focus on the metrics that matter. And so that's things like ROI, which we do more on our media evaluation side of the business. But it's also some of the the softer, the engagement metrics that you were talking about. And to me, ROI is hugely important, but it's not. The way that it's measured is often just kind of one component of success, in my opinion. It might be more of the short term, but there's also the brand building that activities that might not immediately lead to ROI, but they're creating more of a connection with consumers, and that's going to help you in the long term. So that's where. Like I said, that's something that I'm really passionate about, is trying to bring both kind of the short term and the long term perspective, and really helping our clients to make sense of all of the information that they have, and really use our experience to help them figure out what measures matter.
And do you think then that sort of return on investment has to be that monetary dollar sign on a ROI, or could it be a return on investment for experience, or does it have to be a dollar?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I was saying. That I feel like it's you're trying to understand the total return that your investment is bringing back, and it's not just financial. Financial is very important, and getting butts in seats, it's important, but there are also these more brand affinity and engagement and connection metrics that I think also are extremely critical to that ROI.
Yes. In an ideal world, they work together. It's like the branding measures help downstream or drive lower funnel conversions for those ROI measures. But ultimately, too, I mean, it comes back to the objective, right? What is in kind of the agency space, we used to refer to it as return on objective, right? What did we set out to do, and did we achieve success? So that's another kind of softer ROI measure that can be looked at too, outside of the hard and fast dollars and cents.
And when you're sort of talking to clients about that sort of return on investment, and when you're not providing that dollar sign at the end, do any of you have that sort of moment where a client's sort of thinking, oh, hold on a minute, why are you providing me with maybe something a little bit different, what they're not used to? Do you ever get that sort of second thought from a client to say, what is this, or this is a new way of thinking, I guess? Or
honestly, I get it less and less.
Okay.
Because I agree with you. I mean, I personally work more with ROMO, which is return on marketing objective, or ROSI, which is return on sponsorship investment. And in talking with clients, I feel like there is a lot more kind of understanding and acceptance that ROI, if you think of it only as just a monetary number at the end, it isn't enough. And so in my experience, I feel like we've come a long way, and it doesn't require that as much education with clients, because they're already there.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so to provide that ROI, you need to use maybe some tools or different methodologies to actually find out those results. So for maybe a typical event or a typical experience, what type of tools or methodologies are you actually sort of using now to get that sort of data to then send on to the client?
Yeah, for one of the verticals with Verizon that I work on, it's really about creating lead generation, a lot of the events that we're doing. And with that, we're, to help drive that, we're trying to optimize constantly, saying what's actually bringing people over to the space, why do they actually want to talk to any of our brand ambassadors to begin with. But with that, we're taking that information and sharing that with the client from each individual event. with that, we're not necessarily calculating the ROI internally with that, but with those numbers, they're calculating it themselves to say, oh, we assume for every prospect that we're bringing in that is not already a customer, there's likelihood that 10%, 15% of them are, they have a number, I'm not going to share it, that percentage of people will eventually turn into it, so turn into a customer. So with that, they'll be able to actually calculate an ROI, or at least what their likelihood of future customers will be.
Sure. And what type of products or services do you actually use to gather that information though? So what are you just using brand ambassadors to sort of gain that information, or
it's a mix. So with that, I mean, at our events, the brand ambassadors are collecting the information, but it's going directly through a third party, and we're going through Genome and some other websites that are collecting the data and housing it. And then that's being driven over to their internal systems as well for any sort of retargeting and other pieces. And then from our side, our reporting is being done directly with those folks every Tuesday, wherever it is. So basically, if we get to work on Monday and we don't stop until Tuesday afternoon when we report it, just like I touched on, we're doing about 40 to 45 events a week that we have to analyze individually, but also as a whole. So it's going across a lot of different tools right now to make us smarter each week.
Okay, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we capture a lot of customer information. So being able to really understand the customer, from an audience segmentation perspective, I think is really critical to success. I mean, if you don't know your customer, you can't develop something that's contextually relevant for them. So looking at measures like LTV, lifetime value, and kind of doing a lot of match backtracking across experiences, connecting online and offline. That's a kind of a big component of it as well. Especially in the media world right now, where everything is moving to a cookie-less environment. Everything's becoming less and less relevant from a cookie. Finding new ways to track that customer journey, as well as looking to make sure that we can serve something that a customer will want to buy, right? So for us, it really is understanding the customer from the segmentation perspective and looking at retention measures as well. So how likely are they to remain a customer? How likely are they to recommend a customer or recommend our product or service? So those are kind of typically the things that we tend to look at.
Okay, Kathy?
Well, and I would say a lot of what I'm doing is complementing those metrics with others that we're collecting both on and off, like inside of the event, but also outside. So we do a lot of brand partnership work, and so thinking about the events that Eric was talking about, often we're kind of making use of the brand ambassadors that they already would have on site, and basically recruiting them to try to come over and talk with us for a couple minutes, and just basically ask about their experience both at the event, but really focused on what brand activation they might have just gone through, and what we're doing is really trying to understand what's the engagement that's coming directly from being at that experience, and what we see, and it's not that surprising, but what we see is that when you look at their engagement with a particular brand relative to a control group or people that weren't at that event, I mean, what we're able to see is that there's more of the lower purchase funnel metrics that start to come through. So they start to have just greater favorability toward the brand. They start to understand, become more familiar with what that brand, product, or service is all about, and then the positive experience that they have really pulls through to getting them to want to try the product in their personal life, and so it's really that sort of in the moment sort of impact that we're trying to understand on the ground, and that's where Nielsen partners with companies like Meshh to be able to to use technology to help us get those insights.
Really interesting, and I think from a like a young researcher perspective, I see like a lot of articles in the news to say that, opinions more than articles, to say that all this technology is going to take away our jobs. We're not going to have a job next week because of technology and AI. Do you think that's true, or do you think that's just throw in the bin and move on to the next sort of article, what you read?
I think it's the opposite, actually. I think with all this information that's being generated, there's going to be a big need for more jobs, especially as it comes to a lot of machine learning and data science capabilities. We need a lot of data scientists and experts to help train all those models and help train the Alexas and the Googles and the Siris of the world, because you need a human to analyze all that data and look for all the semantics and speech patterns and trends and really train it. So that's just kind of one use case, and then also being able to create models to predict outcomes. That's also going to come from a human in a data focused role. From my perspective, it's going to continue to really bloom in the market for human capital and human talent in the data and analytics world is continuing to blossom.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Nielsen is investing a lot in AI and machine learning, and it's not, the way I see it is it allows the humans to focus more on the value creation part. So Justin, made a great point about how, you have to train the models, but you also have to be able to understand what they spit out. So they'll get better and better, but there's still a lot of components that machines still, they're just not going to be as good at. They can recognize patterns, but they also maybe are recognizing patterns that are being caused for a reason that's really unrelated to what we're trying to understand. And so that human kind of brain power, I think, is going to become more and more important. And what I'm excited about personally as a researcher is that I'm hoping what it will do is it will allow my team and I to spend a greater percentage of our time focusing on the insights and less on the getting to the data that we need.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think because being able to it's making it easier for us to be able to share the day-to-day data with the clients, because we don't have to sit there and oh, this is what the report looks like, this is what it is like. And that's where we used to spend a lot of our time, being able to give access to dashboards and other things. That's the easy stuff. And then with that provides the time that everyone else needs to be able to figure out what's the important information from that data. But I think also just, as somebody who's not directly in data analysis, as long as they don't start learning how to forward emails, I guess my job is safe. But I think looking at it from a human perspective, I think there's always going to be that need for almost like a human gamble on things. And this is the weirdest analogy ever on this one, but this is what's coming to mind. So one part of my job is I work on music festivals, and I was at Music Midtown a couple weeks ago, and the second headliner on the second stage was somebody named Lizzo. And with this, who thought Lizzo was going to be brought up at this panel? But who would have predicted, was there data that could have possibly predicted that this person was going to have the #1 song in the country that was released 2 years ago, and the entire place was at this tiny stage opposed to the massive stage that had a bigger headliner on it? But Live Nation took a gamble on this person, put them up there, booked this entire tour for them that is now completely sold out. And it was that's just taking a gamble on it and assuming that the trends are going in that direction. And I think that's where there's always going to be a need for a little bit of that human insight into it.
I mean, just kind of adding to that point, I mean, the other part of this is with all this data that's generated, we need humans to communicate to decision makers. What does this mean? How do I action my business from it? How do I, basically take complex constructs and distill it down into layman's terms for the decision makers? Because oftentimes stakeholders in a lot of our clients or in large organizations, they're not data people. They need to know kind of, in simplest form, what happened, why it happened, and what do we do about it, and then kind of move forward from there.
And did you ever see, so when you started in your careers, did you ever think that AI and automation and machine learning would ever come into market research? Did you ever think when you started that all of these cool, wacky tools would ever exist? Did anyone think about it then? Or was it just...
I don't think I ever thought about it. And it's almost weird how I started working with Meshh and you guys was, I think I was sitting around one night saying like, I'm so frustrated by inconsistent numbers or reporting because, you know, you can only get so much right with a human standing there marking it down on a sheet of paper or clicking. And that's just not how we should be doing things nowadays. And then it just so happened that the next day, somebody from your team who I recognized and used to work with was walking by and I was like, oh, what are you doing now? And he said this. And I'm like, that's exactly what I was talking about last night. And it's completely changed how we're collecting data. It's also changed the job of the brand ambassador. Like they're not spending all this time like trying to keep track of the numbers they have to send me. And now our reporting is extremely accurate. We're making much smarter decisions about the events we're going to go to. Things that we used to think were successful, or we're now realizing, oh, this may not be generating all the leads that we want, but it's also reaching more people than we ever thought it could, which is changing how we're doing business completely. So it's been insanely useful for us.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think when I started out it was really in the consideration set, but you know, to Eric's point now, you know, a lot of companies are making a big effort to invest in a data collection infrastructure, you know, so that we have credible information that we can rely on and pull at any points in time, understand trends, patterns, you know, and you know, prior to that, it was, you know, some clients would rather take that money and build a, you know, bigger, better program, you know, versus taking that same type of money and investing it in measurement and data collection. So I'd say it's definitely top of mind for a lot of advertisers.
So now it's time for you guys to grill the panel and put these guys on the spot a little bit more than me. So if you do know Slido on the app, and I will ask some questions from Slido. So first up, Kathy, can you talk a little bit more about the experiential research, what you do at Nielsen, and what are some of the examples and what you're sort of experimenting with as a large agency?
Yes. So, we, we work through a couple of partners, including Meshh. We do a lot of really two types of experiential research within Nielsen Sports and Nielsen Music. One of them is really focused on the brand partnership impact. And so for that, we have a couple of partners, including Meshh, who help us deliver or administer surveys on site. And so by using Mesh's technology, we actually can recruit them and then have them fill out a short 5 to 7 minute survey on their own phone without really any download or any exchange of PII. So that's been really beneficial for us because it helps us feel like we're collecting information that is that's both rigorous and quantitative, but also that is it's more natural and it's right in the moment. So we're really getting that kind of that true sense of the brand engagement. Another approach that we use is to measure the traffic patterns. So that, and we also work with Meshh to do that. So trying to help, and actually one way that this can be helpful is if you have a music concert, let's say, you can actually get real-time information on what the what the traffic flow is. So how many people are moving to different parts, and to use your example, Eric, you could actually look at the data and start to see that there are lots of people going into this one smaller stage, which might help the staff actually react to that. And at least if you can't change the stage at the last minute, it can at least help ensure that there's staff to kind of help with crowd management. So I mean, things like that we're working on. We also do work with NASCAR and with Formula One. We actually did a study more recently with a whole tour, a cycling tour. And so for that, really what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand and measure not only the experience on the ground, but again, really that impact back to the brand. So is it helping create more engagement? And like I said, I mean, one of the things that we try to do within my group is to take more traditional methods of survey research, but then marry them with technology to be able to make the experience of the experiential research better and more reliable for the attendees.
Great. So Eric, let's start with you for this side. So a question from Scott. When you're hiring for your teams, what traits, skills and qualities are you looking for in a junior geek or junior talent?
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you used the word geek. That's nice.
I like the word geek.
Ideally, somebody smarter than me, but I think the reason why I've been successful and why teams are successful is really starting from a leadership role, is really working with people and building them up and helping them become strong leaders themselves, and feeling like they can that you're going to support them in their decisions and they can make crazy decisions within that. But I think when I'm hiring for teams and what traits, I like people that they don't necessarily fit the mold of what you would expect to come in. Yeah. I'm not just saying, oh, I need to have somebody who's worked 8 years at an agency and that's what I want. I don't have that career. I've been all over the place, and I think because of that, it brings a different perspective to things in problem solving and just being able to sit at a table with a diverse group of people and talk through different things, and offer that different perspective, I think is really unique. But really just somebody who's hungry and is interested in learning more. It's not just about providing service or answering emails or getting to it or anything. It's really like they're actually interested in it, and whether they're going to be the superstar at analytics or they're going to be this, as long as they're curious, I think that's what's is the most important trait for me.
Justin?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think somebody who is hungry and curious to learn, somebody who is kind of a self-starter and goes the extra mile to try different things. Somebody who comes with fresh ideas, who likes to think outside the box. I think a lot of the talent that we get from an analytics perspective, they're learning. They are still learning how to take all those really complex constructs that they've worked on using, all the years of schooling from a technical perspective, R, Python, SQL, to take that information and to communicate it to leaders and to decision makers. So, somebody who can come in and is very strong technically, I like to, help them learn and how to develop into folks that are very confident in a room and confident presenting sometimes controversial information to decision makers and sometimes bad news. Everyone likes good news, but sometimes we have to be the stewards of the unfortunate news and make challenging decisions. So for me, it's somebody that can take all that information in and go to work and while they're at work hard, but also play hard. So that's kind of how I approach a lot of hiring for my teams.
Kathy at Nielsen?
Yeah, I agree with everything that these guys have said. For me, I think communication is really critical. Curiosity, that's always, when I talk with somebody, that's the number one kind of, it's a non-starter if they're just not curious about the world around them and about how people think and make decisions, and even just curiosity about how we do things at Nielsen and what do we stand for. So I want somebody to be curious about a lot of things, both things that relate to work but also that don't, because I found that really contributes to their success. The other piece is adaptability. So a lot of times when I talk with people who are interested in market research, they'll have a preconceived idea that it's sitting in front of large reams of data or working on Excel all day. And it's like that's a part of the job, but it's really, really important to be able to use critical thinking skills to assess the information in front of us, and really have strong communication skills so that you can communicate the meaningfulness of the insights, but also like the rationale behind them. I mean, how a lot of times it's not just about telling the story and making a recommendation, but we'll also get questions on, okay, well, what makes you think that? What parts, like what's the rationale behind that thinking? So it's really, really important that that you can be very detailed and very focused on accuracy at a very minute level, but it's also equally as important that you're able to distill the insights down into a manageable package, and that you can present that in whatever form, an email, a conversation, or a more formal presentation, in a way that is going to be as easy to digest as possible while still making sure that the meaning comes across.
Eric, you can blame Rebecca for this one.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
No.
So you talked about the attribution models. Do you see a shift towards more multi-touch models? And if not, what do you think is the barrier to adopting these?
I mean, I think ideally, but I think the difficult piece with it, in my opinion, or what I'm seeing is people are competitive, companies are competitive, and people don't necessarily always want to work together and share information. Mm-hmm. And until we all want to make each other better, that's the barrier right now. I mean, I can share all the information with my client or somebody who we're working with, but if the story is going to tell that the investment that's currently going to this other piece should be coming to me, they don't necessarily want to tell that story.
Okay.
That's the barrier. That's really what it seems to me. I mean, I don't know what you're.
Yeah, I mean, information travel is always kind of a challenge. What clients or companies are willing to share, there's always a lot of sensitivity around that. So, I mean, I think the answer depends. I think it depends on the use case.
Don't sit on the fence. Come on.
For a brand, when we have access to all the information in our store, I think it makes a ton of sense because we can see, information from all of our channels: search, social, programmatic display. So we have all that information in house, or we have partners that can give us that information. So, multi-touch attribution, and I would even go kind of a second step further and talk about, media mix modeling, and as far as understanding where you're investing and how you're investing and what you're getting back, is kind of the way a lot of things are going. And when we start talking about data privacy, so if you look right now in the press or in regulation, there's nine regulations in various states. There's also GDPR, CCPA in the US is really big right now. And those are tools to help advertisers like us, kind of still effectively understand patterns and behaviors and derive those insights. So the short answer is yes, I think multi-touch attribution is incredibly valuable, especially with those privacy laws that are in place right now. But when you start to look kind of out of context, not in the brand setting, more in the agency side of things, there are a lot of barriers because a lot of partners don't want to share information, and that becomes a challenge when you're an experiential agency sitting in the experiential swim lane and a media partner doesn't want to share certain results. It can become a challenge.
And I just want to add,
sure.
Even though I know this question wasn't directed toward me, this is an area that Nielsen is incredibly passionate about, and I'm not an expert, although I could certainly put you in touch with the experts. But this area, being able to be an independent, objective kind of aggregator of data, media data in particular, is really, really the core of what Nielsen does. And so, we've we are constantly putting more and more investment into the attribution models that we use so that they can be used across by industry, by advertisers across the industry.
Okay. Time is up, unfortunately. So obviously at 4 a.m. we're all going to go to Eric's pizza place, what he's recommended.
Roma's, 3rd Avenue, 88th Street.
There you go. Cheeky little advertisement there for pizza. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed it. If we didn't get back to your question, please do stick around, and I'm sure the guys will be more than happy to answer those questions. But thanks very much for joining, and enjoy the last day of Ad Week. Thanks very much.